I'm writing a book about the war in Afghanistan, but I got interested in this because I wanted to understand the war on terror, and there's been a lot that's written about the war on terror from our experience, either from soldiers or from people here. But I was interested in trying to understand what the war on terror actually means to Afghans or to people on the ground that are not Americans. And so I sought out people that would represent that point of view. So my book focuses principally on three characters. One of whom is our friend or our ally, who's sort of a governor of a province. Another one is our enemy, he's a Taliban fighter. And the third is somebody who I see as caught in between, is a sort of civilian. She's a housewife from a rural country village. And so the idea was to look at these three lives over the course of the 10 years and try to figure out what that says about our experience in war and the Afghan experience in the war. Well, I mean, I had a lot of, in doing the research, I had a lot of my own assumptions about the war on terror challenged. I mean, I went in thinking that the war in Afghanistan was a war of necessity. And I came from New York, and I was there when the Twin Towers were attacked. And so it seemed to be a very, common sense thing to do, to go there and to fight terror. But in actually going and researching this, it seems to be much more complicated than that. And now I've come to see, I think it's actually a war of choice, in fact. And so for instance, the characters that I talk about, the Taliban fighter, for instance, he was somebody who, like most Taliban fighters, actually surrendered and quit after 2001. I remember the Taliban are the people that we're fighting today, and it's a pretty bloody insurgency. But after 2001, most of the Taliban, or in fact I would say almost all the Taliban, essentially quit. And a lot of them tried to cut deals with the new US-backed administration. And I think we weren't prepared at that time to actually, we weren't in that sort of political frame of mind to accept that. And so we spurned all of these people who were coming forward to try to make deals, and essentially created a state of affairs in which whole swaths of Afghan society, particularly those that are represented by the Taliban, felt that they had no place within the current system. And so they started to fight. And now we're going, these days, the main policy approach to Afghanistan is to try to find a negotiated settlement to the war. And I think looking at the history and looking at what we could have done, the sort of missteps we made, could help inform us in how to move forward. Well, the first policy theme, I think, is that this, at this point, is a war of choice, in that we can end this war if we wanted to. It takes political will, and it takes an understanding of the war in which the people that we're fighting can be brought to the negotiating table. And looking at the history of that, I think will help inform those policy decisions. I think that's the first and foremost. The second is the U.S. Is supposedly going to leave or pull out most of its troops by 2014, but there's a real looming question of what comes after. And in fact, Afghanistan's actually been at war for 30 years, even though we've physically been there for 10 years. And so we want to make sure that as we're leaving Afghanistan, that we leave Afghanistan in a sustainable way, and that we don't leave it in a way that ends up being another civil war, which is what it was in the mid-90s, for instance, and which will just sort of be bogged down for years and years and years. And so I think understanding the history and understanding how the war transpired over the last 10 years is really important to figure out the best way forward after 2014. They should read the book if they want to understand what happened in Afghanistan and what we should do to make things better.